During the most recent RTN season, my good friend Steven was able to clear his life schedule enough to be able to attend one of the RTNs near him. Now, Steve's been playing FaB as a weekend warrior of sorts for years, attending his armory skirmishes, and then, when able, some of the larger events within the region. So in other words, he's just like most of us in the larger gaming community. But this time around, something was different for him. On his update call to me on the way back from the event, there was a bit of a different tone. Steve even indicated that before the event started, he felt like he didn't really belong there. And this statement really resonated with me. See, I knew this wasn't a community issue. The folks in Portland are awesome, right? He knows the local folks. Everyone is awesome and supportive. And hey, everyone loves Steven. So I reached out to him to discuss this, and he has agreed to join us today to share his story and to join me for a wider discussion on finding each of our places within Flesh and Blood. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. So before we get into today's video, just kind of setting some ground rules. Steven's here sharing with us his perspective and his feelings, and I'm going to be asking him questions on both sides of the argument. You may relate to what he has to say. Others out there may not. Both of those perspectives are completely okay. Having this sort of discussion and having this sort of dialogue is very important, again, from both sides. So it is my ask and my expectation across the Dice Commando community that we listen to what everyone has to say, listen to both sides, listen to all perspectives, and treat each other respectfully. Thanks for watching, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. So thank you so much for joining us for a special episode, a different episode of Go Again, a Fabulous Cast. So I have one of my best friends in gaming here with me today, Steven. You've been here several times in the last, probably at this point, 490 episodes or so. Wow. I know, it's getting up there. And as I mentioned in the intro, he is a weekend warrior at best.
Yeah.
Has been for a long time because you're like many of us. You are a FaB dad,
yeah,
with a job and all that good stuff, right?
Us, yeah.
So, can you bring everyone up to speed? You know, how has your consumption, so to speak, of Flesh and Blood events been? You know, not necessarily the product you buy, ill-advised or otherwise, right? But how has your consumption of Flesh and Blood events been through your history, post-pandemic, obviously?
Yeah. I've been able to make it basically monthly is about what I can manage. We get down to a few armories. I've gone to a few armories in Gongai and some other places.
And just to put in perspective, for him, coming to Gongai is a 45-minute drive.
It is.
Best case.
It put pretty much any place around, it's 30 at minimum. Yeah.
Right. To any store.
To any place, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been able to actually get some games in, you know, anywhere from 4 to 5. And that's a big deal for me, just sitting down with people and doing those games. So that's how I...
Well, that's specifically your armory consumption. But
yes.
You've done a pretty decent job of making it out to skirmishes or RTNs or pre-releases. You and I specifically in the precasts talked about how much we both collectively love pre-releases, right? Stuff like that. Right?
Yeah. Who can resist the calling of those big events with the you know, the promise of 6 or 7 games and everyone's there and you know, all the prizes that I'll never get, and I get to look at and those are fun. Those are a big draw. So I get to go out to a few of those, and I've had really great times at a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be clear on the pricing for pre-releases, at least lately, has been entry pricing.
Yes.
Right? So you leave with an RF random hero or something like that. But
yeah,
I mean, pricing is, to be clear, pricing is not the main part of this discussion, right? But so the takeaway here is that Steven, through his method of interacting with Flesh and Blood, is he'll say, hey, this is an event I want to go to. We'll actively work with his family to clear the schedule to make it happen.
Yep.
Right, which is, again, there are many people out there who don't necessarily talk about Flesh and Blood on the Twitters 19 times a day, who are in very much the same boat. So let's fast forward then to the recent RTN, which inspired this cast. Tell us about your experience and then what led to basically your messaged to me on the way home.
Yeah, so I messaged Andrew after this and just kind of diatribed, which I do. I'm going to try to not do it here.
We won't do the 7-minute message here.
Yeah, we won't.
But
had a great time. Run by good people. Had a great time.
This was Going right?
Games.
Great store in the area.
Good
great TO
store,
over there.
Had great people. I did feel unprepared for the, what I want to say, environment.
Mm-hmm.
In that it was very competitive. And
so this was a draft RTN.
It was
right?
a draft RTN. Draft, obviously, there's a draw there. There's the whole, extra elements that it's exciting. What are you going to get? What are you going to play? Don't know. And I was not prepared for what competitive draft, the environment that I found myself in. Thanks for your patience. And I was ready. I'm there to joke around, have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
enjoy the community part of Flesh and Blood, play some games.
Right? I absolutely am there for that. That's a big draw for me. Is just the back and forth, the actual the actual playing with people, and it was a little different in that drawing or the draft aspect of it was silence. It was serious. It was very controlled. All of that is good. All of that is necessary for the community. It just was one I wasn't ready for, or in terms of I wasn't expecting, I should say. And so Andrew got to hear about it, and he sat through the whole message. Very proud of him. And what it came to is I had to finally kind of step back and look at what am I. Where is my place in FaB competitive, in the FaB competitive world? I wonder if there is a place, being a monthly player.
So that's a strong statement, right? I wonder if there is a place for me. And so granted, if we take that particular statement out of context as you just worded it, right? Yeah. What is my place in the Flesh and Blood competitive community? The answer very clearly could be there isn't one for you.
Yep.
And that's fine, right? But Flesh and Blood, if the Flesh and Blood community at large, especially here in Portland, which I think we collectively take a lot of pride in, is very welcome. Like, regardless of whether you're a teeth kicker or whatever, we are very opening and we take a lot of pride in that. And I think the larger Flesh and Blood community does as well, in terms of being open and welcoming people and wanting people to grow. Right?
That's very true.
So that's why your story, I think in this particular case, rang really true with me, is you've been someone who's been like, you know what, I want to go to this, like, I'm going to go to this ProQuest. Yep. And I know I'm going to go, X and 2, right?
Yeah.
or whatever.
Full
right?
knowledge. Yeah.
No, and that's I'm not saying that like the score is something people should aspire to, but going and trying to enjoy playing Flesh and Blood, being part of the community, is something that collectively we should aspire to, right? And I think that your story on that is very apt. You clear your schedule to go to that stuff. So the fact that when you entered into this particular thing, you questioned, do I even belong here anymore? And again, I want to be very clear. I don't think it's a problem, right? I don't think it's a problem statement. But it is something, I think, again, that your story can resonate with others out there of how do you change your Flesh and Blood. Maybe this is the larger discussion of the evening is, has Flesh and Blood hit an inflection point of sorts where the larger events are no longer, and to be clear, by larger events, I mean like 40, 60 people events is what I mean, right? Not like the Pro Tour and stuff you have to travel to, right? The larger local events. Mm. Has that hit an inflection point where it's no longer a place where casuals can go? And that's really why I wanted to bring you on and get your opinion on that as someone who felt that they didn't belong there. And I get that there's a bias in that question. I get it. Yeah. Right. But
and understanding I have no real answers, but there's got to be some level there, and a lot of that is just someone's own life. I did meet one, or I should say, I overheard another dad there saying the exact same thing I say, probably to everyone I play against. And that, I start off saying, if it's a competitive event, like, hey, I'm a trash player. I only get to go here once a month. I'm just here to have a great time. You're about to, kick me in the nuts. It's going to be great. And whatever happens there, it's a fun little setup for a good game. And I heard a dad say something real similar there too. And I noticed sometimes I did say this at like at this RTN, and there was not anything overt. There was kind of like, interesting that you would show up. and that wasn't it. It wasn't even negative. It was honestly, it was like out of there. I was like very curious, like, oh yeah. And I was actually curious myself. I'm like, why am I here? It's like going to a sporting game, I think, or I say sporting game. Sports ball. So it's one of those things. It's like going to an event. You're not playing exactly, but you're still part of the whole environment. You're waving do people have those banners? Your
the foam fingers.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like being there. So even if you're playing,
I see where you're going. I get it.
But you still want to be there. And then even if you're not top 8 or nothing, you still want to hang out a little bit and be like, what happens here? And I see people updating everyone on Discord. I catch like 1 out of 1,000 messages on Discord. So all these conversations, all these like things have happened completely over my head, but you still want to be there. So I'm gonna talk.
No, so let me let's take the next step, right? Because it does inherently make sense that as Flesh and Blood continues to grow, that maybe not skirmishes as much, but certainly your RTNs and your ProQuest, right? Someone out there on the other side of the camera right now is watching this. They're probably not anymore at this point, to be honest, but they're watching. They're just like, well, bro, you just don't belong in a competitive event. And I think there's a fair... I don't appreciate that argument, but I think there's a fair argument there of, well, why are you there? So let me flip the question a little bit to you. If the draw is the larger event where you know that you're going to be able to take an afternoon and slam 6 games, right? Why do you believe that someone and I'm not saying you particularly, because I know that if I put up an event on Discord, I'm like, hey, we're going to meet at a bar and play 6 games, I know you'll be there. Oh, yeah. Right? But why collectively will the community not do that? Because we've repeatedly seen that the Weekend Warriors will only be drawn to an organized, or I should say an OP event. So why do you think that despite, like you said, there was another person there who was like, hey, I'm just here to play games, I know I'm going to get my teeth kicked in. Yeah. Why do community-led events struggle to get the 30 people at a meetup? Like, why does it have to be a competitive level event to even draw the people that aren't quote-unquote competitive? What do you think the dichotomy is there? Because that's what I find very interesting about this.
It was an RTN. I think there's just hype around any big event that even the monthly dorks like me can like hear about and say, I'm gonna go, I want to be there. Road to Nationals, even the title, just
is it just putting the big pin on your calendar? There's hey, I have to have the 17th free because there's a big event. Is that how it works out? I know I interrupted you, and my apologies, but please.
I think from my mind, it's the guarantee that people will be there, and there's going to be a number of games. And that's true of armories. But armories, and this is me, this is only me. I got a family. I got kids that need my attention, all that stuff. So when I see something start at, 11 a.m., for example, it's the promise of the whole day. And if I have weeks on out to prepare for a whole day that starts early in the day, which promises that I will be there for the evening. It's very structured for my own like family situation. I understand, but I think there must be other dads that are looking at it for the exact same thing. They're like, I can do that. but I can't do a Saturday 6 p.m. situation because the kids or such and such need me there.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
and just to build on that from an inclusivity standpoint, and this is not talking down anyway, right? We're talking people with family commitments or stuff like that, right? But whether you're a dad or not,
you
right?
can be anybody with any
concept,
kind of commitment.
right?
Yeah. But that's just me, and I'm sure that is true of whatever that gentleman's name was that I never got, who came up from Salem, by the way.
Yeah. So had his Saturday.
Yes.
Their Saturday, had their Saturday, drove an hour to
go to
X and 2 or whatever.
Yeah. Who knows what he did? He probably did about what I did. I think I went. Yeah, I didn't win anything. No. I did. like I had a shot. All that to say is like there was that element that I was listening to, and I immediately did resonate. Well, I was like, that's what I'm doing too, exactly, except I didn't come as far. So impressive that he could make that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's zero doubt that when we run these large events, typically, the Pro Crest we have coming up is 32 capped for some logistical reasons, but typically we're in the 40 to 60 range. I would say 33% of the field, I haven't done surveys, right? But I would say 33% of the field is there because they want to be there at a large event. Right, I would say 15 to 20% of the field is legitimately there and will drop X2 if they're out. And then the rest of the people will play all 6 rounds and they're cool with it, right? But they wanted to do well. They tested into it, but they'll play all 6 rounds. So, you have 33% of your field that is there just because they want to be there because they know they'll get flesh and blood games in. And I think that's a very powerful, again, that is not statistical, not true statistical statements, that is my estimate, right? But roughly a third of your field is there to have fun and enjoy the large event.
Yeah.
So using that plus what we just talked about kind of in my previous 2 questions ago, what could we do as a flesh and blood community to encourage I don't want to say non-competitive, because I don't think that you can have, this is my own personal opinion, I don't think the flesh and blood community will show up for no prizes. I don't think they will. But what can you do to promote a I don't even know what the right word is, right? But like you said, one of the issues you had with the draft was you sat down and they're like, no talking during draft. And you're like, well, this is no fun.
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk trash. I want to and again, you have to have the competitive. No one is taking that away. Be very clear.
And I understood the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
It was just
sending signals, communicating to teammates.
All of
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't mean it's fun.
Yeah. I was just not used to that environment. And I was, fully expecting to, because I do not want anything to change in terms of competitiveness in this game.
No, it's what drives the game.
It is, it is wonderful.
But you know what else drives purchases in the game and keeps the game alive and keeps fueling it?
Filthy
It's
casuals.
people like you.
Yeah.
And me.
Monthly boards.
And me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't want the prizes are flashy. They're wonderful. I love being buddies with people who are competitive, and I there's not one game that I've had that I don't glean something. I don't learn like one tiny little bit that I can't take from someone who's played a lot more than me. So I love that aspect of it too. I don't know what it would be. I don't even think anything. Yeah, I know that this might nullify the video. I don't even think anything needs to change, but I do.
Well, I do, but go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
But it was the only thing that caught me was when people do say things like, "Oh," and even me when I question myself, "What am I doing here?" And maybe just the awareness, or I don't want to say acceptance. I'm no victim here. Everyone has been just awesome when I play with. But maybe if there was more of like oh, cool, you're here for the party. That makes sense.
I mean, I don't think anybody who's still listening at this point thinks that anybody was mean to you. And to be clear, I hope we've been very clear to this point that like part of the reason we collectively are still engaged in the Portland community is everybody's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why the impact, and that's why we're having this chat is you went to an event where everyone was awesome. You were not excluded. You were included. People were being amazing to you, and you still felt like you didn't belong because at some point, an inflection point, a change, whatever had happened, where you're like, you know what? I'm at a different level than other people.
Yeah.
So, like I'd interrupted you maybe a minute and a half ago, whatever it was, where I said, well, I do think things need to change. And again, that's not that I think FaB competitive needs to change. I agree with you. Yeah. But what I do think needs to change is some way to include the weekend warriors or the third week of the month warriors, right? So that, again, I'll put that question back to you is what type of format of event, not format of play. What format of event would bring you out?
I know exactly.
Okay, yeah, perfect. But you know where I'm going. Yeah, so please.
Yeah, this is very localized. Everyone may disagree. You may even edit this whole thing out. But I'm only speaking for me, but I know this would do it. The best event, we talked about this, the best event that I go to is pre-release. The sealed limited aspect of it is it's so fun. But it's not just it's a new set or whatever. It's here's your decks. You don't have to know, you didn't prep for this, or I should say you can't prep, but
that's actually pretty insightful.
There is no forethought.
That's really insightful.
I don't know about everyone else there, but my mind can barely grasp the fact that I have children, much less the number of children I have, and there's not like a lot of room up there.
Hey, we all make decisions, my friend.
I know it's my fault, but when I do get those precious moments of when I'm driving home from work, where I actually can theory craft and just dream about what I wish I could do in terms of building decks, that's wonderful. But to just show up with no prep needed to these wonderful events which are innately a party environment. Pre-release is just everyone's celebrating. It's a holiday. But if that happened more, I'd go to a limited heavy hitters till the end of time.
Okay, but let me flip it on you,
sure.
though, right? So let's say I agree with pre-release. I think pre-releases and skirmishes are the greatest events that we currently have within the quote unquote OP system.
Yeah,
I've been very public about that. But let me flip it on you. Heavy hitter sealed on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be the same. And to be clear, I think heavy hitter sealed is the best sealed we've ever had. But I don't think you'd get 30 people out for a heavy hitter sealed on Saturday.
It's not a pre-release anymore. It's different.
That's my point.
Yeah. I think the people that would be attracted to that are these kinds of people. The people that could show up with sleeves,
right,
and say, "I'm ready." That's it.
but here's the practical from a TO and an event organizer standpoint.
Yeah.
Here's the practical problem of that. Is I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Those people would show up, but you can only make it to one event a month. And without there being a formal your 1 weekend a month isn't going to line up with somebody else, right? Because that's the point, is for an RTN or a skirmish or whatever, you're like, all right, this is Gone Guys pre-release, wife name, insert here. I need the 17th free. And you make it happen, and so does he, and so does she, and so do they. Mm-hmm. But you don't do that for a random armory.
Correct.
Or a random, Andrew and Travis throwing an event. Right?
I would speak for me. I would do that. But it's...
Yeah.
That's because
But if it was something special, not if it was an armory.
Yeah.
Right?
Unfortunately, that is actually true.
Right, because the draw would be that you knew there was going to be 30 people there. And that's the push-pull is like you're not going to go. It's like you're like, oh, well, if we do a random meet, and that's the problem with meetups, especially in Flesh and Blood with no pricing and stuff. You're like, well, I'm not going to drive across town to go sit at a bar and have a beer with Andrew and hope that maybe 8 people show up.
Yeah, and that's
right.
Yeah, that's tough. That's the tough limitation there. And again, I don't know. I have any answers. I know that it's a very specific situation that has to occur to get people like me out there.
You said that in a funny way, and I'm interrupting again, and I apologize, but you said that in a way that, again, diminished you. And I want to be very clear that I don't have the data. I don't know from a Flesh and Blood standpoint, but I very much believe that the monthly warrior, the weekend warrior, is 75 to 80% of who's buying Flesh and Blood product.
Yeah, that's... I never thought about that.
Again, I don't know the pure numbers, and I'm, the 75. Somebody's gonna be like, oh, it's not 75, right? But the amazing players out there, the Joshua Laus, the Ukulele Benders, all the other people I'm leaving off that I'm gonna get hated on, they're not buying billions of dollars. I mean, it's not billions, but you get my point. Product, right? It's you, and it's everyone like you, and it's people like me, and I really am just curious how we in communities, it's not just community building, it's community sustaining. Because at some point, if you're like, I don't belong at this event, then you're not going to go to that event again. Which, to be fair, for your particular draft, maybe that was the wrong event for you to go to. Completely fair.
Perfectly fine, yeah.
But then what do you do next time you're like, oh, you know what, I'm actually not going to go to that? And then you're 3 months down the road and you're like, oh, I haven't been to a FaB event in a quarter. And there's this other game out there.
That right? So never happened. Just kidding.
Well,
yeah, but
maybe not for you, but you see what I'm
yeah.
saying,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So from a community sustaining standpoint, I don't, again, I've said the points. I don't believe that the vast majority of Flesh and Blood players are the top tier teeth kickers. Mm-hmm. So how do we engage that part of the population when we've hit the inflection point where all of these stores are maxed out for how many seats they can fit at the local level? The only people there, and so maybe 3 or 4 people. And I guess maybe that's a self-solving problem, to be fair, because if you're maxed out and 3 people drop, then 3 more people will fill. So fair enough.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, that's a fair point, actually. But at some point, you start getting a bottom-up push.
Yeah.
Right.
And like you said, maybe there is what is the answer there? And maybe it's just that some people, no matter what, have to grow out of it because of their situations. Mm-hmm. And like, if I can only do this, yada yada. But I think Flesh and Blood is unique in that it's. I could dive too long on this, but it's specifically geared for people to think about, in the back of their minds, they're always puzzling it out. Maybe that's all the games, but even if you grow out of it in terms of because for example, to be honest, I'm looking at this month, I'm looking at the ProQuest coming up, and it's Commoner Crawl, and then 2 weeks after is the Gungai ProQuest, I believe, and I was like, you know what, it's the Commoner Crawl for me. I've already,
and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing, but it is the definite push towards okay, I'll go to the.
I'm removing myself from
the big event. Yeah. And that is not bad, and that is just this month.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair, we are fully expecting this to be very lowly attended Commoner Crawl for that very reason that ProQuest is on the horizon.
Oh.
So that's a very interesting. Well, I mean, just being realistic.
No, it is, yeah.
Are you going to go play Commoner, or are you going to go jam a couple more ProQuest games?
Yeah, and I definitely chose the Commoner versus that. So it's maybe that's just the growth of someone like me would go towards that.
Interesting.
And is there an answer to keep someone like that in the competitive big event world? I don't know. But
again, someone would on the other side of the screen say, well, we don't care about that person. I don't care. Sorry, I use that aggressively. I didn't mean it aggressively, but they're like, well, you've removed yourself from the competitive. I think maybe that's a better way to say it. You've removed yourself from the competitive, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and they're right.
I mean, no, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
But again, if you look at a vast majority, what percentage? Let's even take in an extreme example, Pro Tour Los Angeles, right? You had to qualify. You had to do very, very, very well
already
to qualify for Pro Tour Los Angeles. I would argue that not 100% of the people that went to Pro Tour Los Angeles thought that they were going to win Pro Tour Los Angeles. And that's even at the competitive level. Now, there is certainly swagger, and swagger carries weight because it keeps you motivated and stuff like that. I'm not knocking swagger, right? And by swagger, I mean confidence, blah, blah, blah. Again, not derogatory. But I am going to flip it a bit actually on the competitive, right? Because how is going to Pro Tour with no intention to win any different than you going to an RTN with no intention to win? I don't think it's different.
No, yeah, you're there for a bigger party.
You're there to participate in the event.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that to push back and say, well, maybe you just don't go to that event because you're not competitive, I don't think it's fair, because you have some of the best players in the world going there and saying, you know what, I'm hoping maybe I can go undefeated day one, or maybe go 5-1 day one, or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Right? So I think if you extrapolate that same logic, you land to where we're at in this discussion.
Yeah.
And then it really just, actually that's really good, right? Because then at that point, it really just boils down to community engagement. And how do we keep Steven involved in the game? Because if Steven goes to an event and doesn't feel like he belongs, not because of mean people, but because he just doesn't feel that the event is for him, how do we keep you involved? I don't know that we're going to come to a conclusion in this, and I know we've taken many comments in the past in something without a conclusion. I get it. But I think sharing your story and your feelings with the community at large has value.
Yeah. And I don't mind discussing things without an answer, because that's, discussions can carry on for time and you think about things and maybe even something has arrived. But again, to be clear, it is life choices that put me in that spot to where I'm like, oh, I can only do such and such. And I was so happy to be there. Now, I didn't feel any pushback or antagonism or anything. Mm-hmm. It was all my self-reflection of like, oh my goodness, is this my scene any longer? Or can I?
Well, that's a power. Is this, do I belong here any longer?
Yeah.
Is what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, Flesh and Blood is doing very well.
Yeah.
But it is not yet at a point where it can lose some percentage because people don't feel like they belong. Yeah. So I think it's a very powerful statement.
If we are elite, if we're part of the people that eventually will fall out of it, and I won't. That's me. But if people like me are a part that will eventually grow out of it or fall out of it, I still think it's worth seeing if we could plug that hole somehow. I don't know how, but again, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Well,
love,
but that's why I brought you here.
Yeah.
Is how, because what I really struggle with as an event organizer, as a community driver, which I do think I am, is I'm trying to figure out how to get folks out to things, because there's this huge struggle in the community, at least our community in Portland, where people won't show up unless there's stuff to win. And then the people who, even though they're not there to win the thing, still won't come because there's nothing to win. And I don't know how to solve that problem.
That is that's I don't. Those people live in a different world than me, so I don't know how to mesh our groups. But I do, and like I said,
keep going. Well, I know, again, I'm interrupting. I'm horrible in this cast, and I do honestly apologize. I appreciate you being here, and hopefully everyone understands we're buddies. And
yeah,
the one part of that is that I need to caveat is that you still showed up to that event knowing you weren't going to win anything, but showed up to that event because you knew people were going to be there because it was something to win.
Correct. I fully understood. There was no real chance.
I just wanted to clarify, and please, if you remember what you were saying, which you probably don't, please continue.
I'm like, I don't remember. No, I just say like draft does hold the mystical appeal of the possibility.
That's a fair point.
So I will say that.
So you were a draft?
I was.
This was a draft.
This was a draft. I did go to the other one as well.
And you argued you'd go to a sealed.
I don't remember what I did sealed. I don't know if I did fantastic, but again, sealed has the same lure. There's the possibility.
Was your sealed a pre-release though?
It was.
Yeah, and you got a Kassai, right?
I pulled a Kassai, so
you did just fine.
I forgot the entire event. I don't know what I did. I just know I pulled a Kassai. That was it. But I think even that, the possibility of just like, I don't have to. Now, of course, the more cards you know going into a pre-release, with all the Discord conversations about it, the better you're going to do. But if you could just get what you get, look at them, form a plan, you're like, this might work. And there's just this like wonderful like, ooh, but the chance is there, even though there's people that practice this 10 hours a day and they're going to absolutely trounce you. You still hold that possibility. So I know that's how I felt going in. I was like, there's a chance. I know better, but I'm still going to like ride that feeling and still play with the people that are going to show me better.
That's an interesting insight because it speaks to kind of a side conversation that's been very much happening in the internet sphere, is that of variability. Knowing that you could maybe walk it. So you're going to leave with the cards that you opened.
Yeah.
So there's good value there. You're like, I'm going to pay $30 for an event. I'm going to leave with 6 packs. So there's good value there, which is a good trade, which I think is very important in events, which I think is something that a lot of places don't care about in Flesh and Blood because there's shinies and stuff like that. But for the normies, I think value matters. But to your point, I think that's actually very powerful. Maybe not powerful, but insightful. I could still maybe like open just the nuts. So that's actually a really good point.
Even though we know this is a game in which you could still open the nuts and play badly.
Right. No, I think that's really insightful, actually. I'll have to think about how we apply that into event structure. To be clear, I don't think there's any like one ultimate solution, and it's certainly probably a community by community thing, right? But if you look at Flesh and Blood on the whole, I agree with you. There's only so many seats at a ProQuest or an RTN, or sorry, an RTN. Well, yeah, ProQuest, RTN, Nationals is only going to have so many seats.
Yeah.
And that may expand and grow over time. I get it, but functionally, the competitive events aren't going to include Weekend Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So but the Weekend Warriors are the ones floating a large part of the business, right? I'm just looking at this from a Machiavellian point of view.
Yeah.
So how do you include them? I'd be very interested to hear people's, we've been talking for, I have no idea how long at this point because I don't have a watch on, but very interested to hear your comments.
Yeah.
But so in the effort of wrapping this up, let's move on to kind of the next piece is
my Riptide tech.
Your Riptide tech. Ping for one. Arsenal
Just
go again.
Keep doing that.
That was a joke, by the way. I know that's not a technical thing. So if we were to, again, if you were the OP, right, you're Alan Hale, right? Or you are Trevor Baker, right? And you have the power to make your ideal Flesh and Blood event that is targeted towards Weekend Warriors, but you've realized that UPF is not the answer to that.
Yeah.
Right. What would bring you to an event that you believe would be something that you belong at, right? Is it a pricing issue? Is it a format issue? What's your dream event?
My dream event is limited sealed. in which, and just as a cherry on top of the whole thing, people do leave with. Everyone leaves with something, even if it's
everybody who comes gets a treat,
even if it's like here's your, I don't know, pistachio nut. I don't know, something,
pistachio
something. But
it's a rainbow foil pistachio nut.
It's a rainbow foil. I don't know, just something. As like a cool, you made it, great. And it's not because I want the value. It's not because I want the recognition. It's more of like a, hey, you came. You fill the seat. Thanks for being there. I like that. I like that stuff. And just going in knowing that anybody could pick up those packs, crack them, make something great. You don't know who it's going to be. You don't know what's going to happen. I do like that. And then there's surprises in that.
So that's a. I mean, if we're looking at the last, I don't know how long we've been talking, right? But that's been a consistent theme of what you've been saying is that the randomness-ishness of it, is that from a value? I just be introspective about it, right? Is that from a value perspective that you're leaving with what you bought, or is it just the variability of it that you might have a chance? I know that's a loaded question.
It is, but it's both. But it is neat that you come in, you don't know what you're going to get, and you're going to take that home. That's huge. But also, I can't deny, and I know that the smart people are going to be like, oh, what you like is that you don't have to put thought into it. And you're right. That's absolutely true. But I don't have to. And I don't want to win on the fact that like, oh, it's just a roll of the dice. Who cares? But there is a skill in building that and playing that well, no matter what. So regardless, a better player.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but I think to a certain extent, it's insulting to LSS to say, and this is not for you, that's for the other side of the camera. I think it's insulting to LSS to say that opening packs is a roll of the dice, because they've done a lot of work to make sure that it is what it is.
Yeah.
But that, I think it's the fact. Is it the fact that everyone's on an equal footing?
It's
to a certain extent, obviously, with randomness.
Yes, to a certain extent, and it really does. It does what many other formats do. Of course, the most prepared, the most researched, the most prepped is going to do better. Even if you know the meta better, you can build it. But yet you can come up with surprises. You can come up with like, oh, look, I pulled this. I can try this crazy thing. I'm going to get a Cintauri sellsword out there with this Kassai. I just know it. Never happened. But I
get you.
But it's those things like that where you're just like, and you can make crazy switches. Like in that draft I did, I played Olympia. I've never played Olympia before. And I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. That was just neat to be like on a whim with the cards I had and be like, I'm just going to do that.
Okay.
I like stuff like that. That's me.
Okay. So, I mean, no, I think we've had a really good discussion here. And as we move to sunset, I think the last thing I want to ask you is I want to challenge you, right? A lot of the discussion has been around, I want to make sure that this discussion doesn't get eclipsed by the fact that you like sealed or limited in that regard.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't personally, this is my opinion, I don't personally know that the answer to including Weekend Warriors is limited. Because a lot of them have decks they spend a lot of money on that they want to get out and play the once a month.
Yep, that's true.
Right? So, I mean, we're all in that boat.
yeah.
Like way too much money, right?
Way too much.
So, I don't know that sealed or I don't know that limited is the right answer.
Mm-hmm. And I don't mean it.
So what would then? This is the last question I'll ask you, and then we'll sunset. Right? What would bring you out in constructed formats? Mm-hmm. That didn't make you feel like you didn't belong there? Because I think that's also, something like a Battle Hardened is coming up in, like we have the Battle Hardened coming up in Tacoma in 2 months-ish, whatever it is. Will you be traveling to that? My guess is no, with your family commitments. No, right? But if you had one in Portland, you would probably try and make
Absolutely tempted to do that, yeah.
Just because of the time commitment, right? So, it's very clear that these larger events do serve as a draw, not just to the competitives, but the weekend warriors. So what then, at a lower level, like a 32-person, whatever, what would bring you out from a constructed standpoint?
It's a good question. Oh man!
And if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I get it.
Yeah. Again, this is not anything, but like I liked an event that you threw, and I don't want to talk too much about it. Which people brought 3 decks.
Oh, the DC Team New Year's tournament. Yeah.
That was an absolute blast. There was that whole deal where you play a deck until it gets beat, and then you have to switch. I don't know why. I like that there was just lots of variety going on. I don't know. This isn't the answer. I want to make that clear.
Well, but maybe community events are the right answer.
But there in the middle of that was discussion and thought with the other people about like, what are you going to do here? I don't know. It had a whole different feeling to it. Mm-hmm. Again, that was a party, but I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I think it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about my own situation and carving more time into thinking and prepping stuff so that I felt like I could actually go in and grab a win. Mm-hmm. So there's so many aspects to that it's just fun to go home and think about, I guess. But yeah, I don't have.
No, I mean, and that's fair. Again, it was off the cuff. So. Yeah. Anyway, as we move to sunset this, I really want to thank you for, again, you put yourself out here today. There are going to be people, and to be clear, they're not here at this point, but there are going to be people who are like, oh, just get good, bro. Yeah. Right. Learn how to play. So I appreciate you putting yourself out here for that. Right. But I think this is part of a larger sub-discussion of how do we include a larger part of the larger community in a super uber competitive focused game. How do we include more people to feel like they are part of, maybe not part of the community, because they're already, again, in Portland, like, we're part of the community. Like, we do a really great job.
Yes.
And that's maybe even what's more concerning to me is like, we've done a great job, and now we have people who feel like they're just getting pushed out. Probably not the best way to say that, because again, they're not being pushed out, they're falling out. How do we solve that problem? So again, thank you, honestly, for putting yourself out there. Because again, I know you're going to take hits for it on the social media. That's the way it works. But I think it was worth the discussion. So again, thank you.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
And again, hopefully people have been commenting because we've gone here. I honestly have lost track of how long we've been shooting, but I don't really care. Yeah. I think it's worth having the discussion. And I've taken some mental notes through this, and we'll see what we can do from a community standpoint. Maybe we'll wrap back around in a year or so and see if it's helped you personally and you as a community out as well. So
this game is worth talking about, so I had a great time.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Steve.
You got it, man.
And if nothing else, stay with me, buddy.
Go Commando.
Good job.
Hey, I knew it was coming.
But I don't want there to be stress about it, because this is about having the chat, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, I think that's a fair intro to the whole thing, right? Is what happened to you, I mean, not what happened to you, but your experience and sharing how you felt, I think will relate to many people out there. Right.
I think so, yeah.
Especially on this channel, right? Because we have, like, I had several people when we were in PTLA come up and be like, I really appreciate, like, I'm a dad. I only get to play FaB once a week. And it's like, there's one guy in particular, I remember, He's like, I'm also a dad. I also play FaB like once a week if I can. He's like, and it's really nice to have that perspective as opposed to these people that play Flesh and Blood 8 armories a week, right? Like,
we're all over the spectrum, right? And it's I've talked to a few people like that play once a month, or which is like me, I play once a month,
right? And I mean, and that's where you'll get challenged.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know that people will make comments on it. To be fair, could you give me a sound check, by the way?
Yes, sir. Sound checking.
I mean, I don't think that the people who will challenge you are even going to click on it to begin with, if we're being clear.
That's true.
Because they just don't, like, they're like, oh, where's the deck tech? Right?
Yeah,
That's that type of person, right? But I just wouldn't worry about that, right? Just tell your story, and your story will resonate with the people that it matters to.
Yeah.
Go from there.
All right. That sounds fair. I will.
We got